What's going on, guys? It's your boy Alec, aka Python Don, and welcome to part 2 of Project Yoshimitsu, my $100 eBay turbo build on my BMW E46. In this video series, I'll be taking you through a detailed and thorough journey on building an E46 turbo start to finish, with detailed information on every part required and what it actually takes to get this job done. The first 2 episodes on this turbo series will be the most difficult, as I'll be spending most of my time underneath the vehicle with the logic that once we're done underneath, the most intensive work will be done and the fun can begin. And knowing that the hardest part is over will translate to even more excitement as we get closer to a finished, beautifully turboed Yoshimitsu. In this episode, we'll be going over everything drivetrain related, from the transmission to the clutch and drive shaft and all the little bits in between. The first thing to do before we get the car in the air is to drain the refrigerant out from the AC compressor. I took Yoshi to a local performance shop to get the work done and arrived to a host of sweet cars in their driveway. I couldn't get my eyes off this wide-body R35. I mean, just look at those rear fenders. And I particularly loved this E60 hiding in their car yard. After the AC had been drained, I took the car back to the garage where I laid out some oil-absorbent mat and aligned the car to be lifted. This is the last time this baby will be powered under its 6 pistons alone.
Python Don.
What's going on, boys? Enjoying some nice weather. Got my afternoon coffee. Let's get into it. Here we are, boys. Let's begin part 2 of this turbo project. So similar to episode 1 in the series, guys, I'm going to do the same thing here. We're just laying out all the parts on the table. I want to do this for each of the episodes just so we can get a good overview of all the parts required, or all the parts that I've purchased, and what we're going to be getting into for this project. So let's get into it. So first thing we got up here, boys, we have a very important piece. This is actually the rear main seal. Since we're going to be taking out the transmission, it's always good, because this is a potential leak point in the E46. It's very rare that you're going to be down there, so when you are down there, always recommended to do this. Quick note, this car has over 114,000 miles on it. I just passed 114K. A lot of these parts are going to be related to the turbo build, in the sense of, even though they're not the actual components you saw in part 1, in the sense of, I'm going to be down there and we're going to be pushing this car harder than it's ever been pushed before. Remember, these cars are rated factory for 225 horsepower from the factory, so we're going to be doubling that, boys, doubling that. And with that, you're going to want to do some good safety preventative maintenance, and like I said, some of these parts, I'm guaranteeing even this one has never been replaced in the lifetime of the car. It's a 21-year-old car, and that's why we're going to be replacing a lot of these components you'll see here, and in the next few series to come are going to be mixed between the turbo components and some maintenance components. So I do recommend, if you guys are going to do something similar and follow suit with this project, don't skip the maintenance side of things that I'm doing here. A lot of these things are going to be related to parts you're going to be working on, or parts that are going to be getting stress from these new turbo components. So they're good things to be doing while you're down there. You're not going to be down there often, and you kind of want to do it once, do it right. So that's what this is all about. So yeah, rear main seal, very important. Below that, we got our short shift kit, which you guys have seen before. But since we are taking the transmission out, we're going to be replacing all the components of the transmission and the short shift kit. So super, super stoked about this. Not only is we're going to do the short shift kit, I think I mentioned this in the first episode, the Detent Pins. I have a ZF 5-speed transmission, and something very common with the 5-speed is these Detent Pins get kind of gunked up, and your first gear and fifth gear, even reverse gear sometimes, is either hard to get into, very vague, or when you start the car, in my case, when you start the car in the morning and the temperature in the transmission is still cold, the fifth gear, the shift knob leans to the fifth side, so it doesn't sit in the center. And then when I'm shifting quickly from you know, second to third, when it still has that lean and the transmission hasn't warmed up yet, I go to shift into third and the lean will actually pull me sometimes into fifth. So by replacing this is a BMW upgraded part actually. These are new BMW components. They now come with a sleeve. They've been upgraded to never have this issue again. So this is actually more robust now with this new piece. So that alone changes the feel of the transmission because you're literally changing the internal actuators of the transmission itself. Just doing this job is going to increase the feel. You're going to get the feedback from the transmission. So to pair this with the short shift kit, with an entire rebuilt, you know, bushing components, all of these pieces here, upgraded bushings there, a new DSSR definitely tightens up the shifting linkages there. Everything here is a strengthening, higher upgraded component, plus the detent pins. This transmission is going to feel literally like I said in the first episode, I want it to feel like a DTM race car, boys. So super stoked about that. We're going to be getting into the transmission, and while we're down there working on that. Everything here is related to drive shaft components. Brand new Guibo. This is a very important piece. A lot of people like to go like polyurethane or like a really stiff material when you're doing these. Go OEM. Do not go anything else. You need the give that this Guibo gives. Anything harder of a rubber than that, you're going to create drivetrain vibrations throughout the whole drivetrain, and it's going to wear out components much faster than normal. This is supposed to be rubber. This is one of the few components that if like I would recommend staying rubber. A lot of the stuff I've done to the car, I've already got poly control arms, the bushings for the sway bars. A lot of the stuff I've already done to that car are poly, stronger than and more harder than the rubber. But with things like this, you want this rubber to absorb the vibrations and stuff down the driveline, especially when it's attached to the drive shaft and it's rotating at really high speeds. Hardware to go along with it. New transmission mounts. These are actually a little bit upgraded. They're still rubber, but they're a harder rubber. Not quite all the way to poly, but they're kind of in between an OEM feel and a poly. I really like these, 034 Motorsports. Again, new hardware for all that. Here we got the carrier bushing for the drive shaft itself, brand new bushing. You're going to want to do this as well. Kind of a tricky part I'm going to be running into, but let's see. I'm going to try to get it done. I don't have the tool to perfectly punch this bearing into place, but try to figure out a way to do that. And I've seen some videos online. I think we'll be able to get it done. Yeah, that's all drivetrain related stuff. Lastly, we have this beautiful piece from Hopwood Motorsports. We got my single mass flywheel, again, lightened from factory. So I think I'm shaving a couple pounds off a factory flywheel which for those that know, any rotating mass, if you can lower the weight from a rotating mass, it increases your performance dramatically, helps the engine rev more freely. So super nice piece. Not too light, because if you do go too light in these, there is some drawbacks to it. So it's a perfect middle ground there. Then the clutch and pressure plate. This clutch is an organic and ceramic mix. So it's going to give me, the ceramic's going to give me the bite that I want. If I drop the clutch, it'll still engage quickly and go. But the organic part of it is going to help still have a blend between drivability and bite and just grip. So something you really need for the power we're going to be pushing through this, for the torque we're going to be pushing through this. And this little bad ting on the front, I love this. E46 boys, represent. But yeah, boys, that's it. This is what we're going to be getting into in this episode. It's going to be a long one, boys, but I don't know if you guys are like me, but I actually enjoy watching long form content, slow pace, just nitty gritty stuff, getting into the details and really learning and understanding the whole process. So I'm going to be learning along the way with you guys. There's a lot of stuff in here I've never done before, but we're doing it together. We're going to get through this. It's going to be sweet, boys. So before we get started on this, there's a few things we need to do to the car first. So let's get started on that. Starting off with a quick liquid moly engine flush. I've heard good things about this product, so I figured why not give it a shot. With 114,000 miles on the odometer, I'm sure this can do some good to lift up any junk I might have inside the engine. Liquid Moly recommends running the car at idle for 10 minutes before draining the oil. She's loud in here on a cold start. Let that run for 10 minutes. All right, boys, 10 minutes is up. All right, now let's drain the oil using my oil extractor. Let's get the dipstick out of here, boy. Push this all the way until it bottoms out just like that. And begin pumping. Now that the oil is warmed up quite a bit, should make it a little easier to pull it out of the system. We sit and wait, boys. All right, let's get this puppy out of here. You can hear it. Oof, that oil is hot. Damn. All right, let's plug this back up. Next, let's break these wheels loose. Barely any effort needed. Pull the car forward a bit. That's definitely too far to the rear. Let's readjust here. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna work. I didn't remember if the jacks pulled the car forward when it was raised or backward, but it's definitely backwards. Sheesh. A little baddie in the air. Next, we're gonna work on getting this exhaust removed. This will be the last time this baby's on this car. After this, we'll have a 3-inch all the way from the turbo all the way to the back. I'm thinking about keeping though this box and this MagnaFlow box in the back, and maybe stepping up from some 3-inch pipes on the end to 3.5 inches, because it's turbo, you gotta have a little bit bigger pipes. But anyways, let's get this exhaust off. I'm gonna work on getting the exhaust in the rear supported by my jack real quick. Just about perfect. Y'all know how exhaust bolts are. Let's see. Let's go for it. It really doesn't want to turn on its own. It just wants to be walked out. Yeah, it's right in your face. We're towards the front now, where the headers meet the front of the exhaust. These bolts are always a pain in the ass to get off. I hit these with some liquid wrench and let it sit a full day. Let me get with this guy. Try and get this guy broken. Jeez. There we go. That's how you do it. Great. All right. Not too worried about that, honestly, because I don't plan on using these bolts anyways. Gonna have a whole completely different exhaust setup. There we go. He does not want to give at all. I don't want to do it. Should I just fucking go for it, boys? Should I just send it? I guess this is gonna be the method. We take this fucking thing off, because damn, those studs are really in there. Let's just say that. Really like my penetrant after a full day of sitting. Still didn't get in there. All right, working our way back. I'm gonna get these two bad boys that are holding this bracket to hold the exhaust in place. So 13 mil in the back. I do keep forgetting I have an electric ratchet, so. Now we got some 13 mils on the center support. I think this exhaust is freed. We just need to go back to the front now and separate it from the headers. This whole piece should drop down. There we go, boys. Let's see how heavy this exhaust really is. Nah, that ain't that bad. These gaskets off. Fuck. I haven't been able to get to the gym, so this will do, I guess. Here we go. A little bit of these, what do you think? A little bit of that. X-pipe and a MagnaFlow. Who would have thought it's a decent workout tool? Next up, we're removing the exhaust shielding so we can have access to the drive shaft. Alrighty, boys, next up we have the drive shaft connection to the differential. Make sure to have your e-brake on so you can break these loose. These are an E12. You're then going to want to go back up, drop your e-brake so you can rotate the shaft and get the other ones. I just dropped the e-brake, but before I completely rotate this, I get these out of here. Now we have 3 bolts that connect the drive shaft to the transmission and the Guibo here. 18 mil in the front, you're gonna want an 18 mil in the back. Try to hold this bolt. It's kind of tricky, but you can grab it kind of at an angle here. The best tip here is remove the transmission brace so you have better access to the 18mm nuts in the back. I didn't realize this was possible, so I struggled a bit as these bolts are torqued close to 80 foot-pounds and you'll need a good counter hold to break the bolts loose. Alrighty boys, lastly we got the center support bearing. Bear with me on the audio. My DJI attachment just broke, so you're gonna be hearing me through the iPhone mic for now. Hopefully I can get this sorted by next week and we can get back to some good audio. But we got a 13 mil right here, 2 13 mils, and then we'll be able to drop the drive shaft. The rear section of the drive shaft has slots on either end you can use to get a pry bar in and force the drive shaft off the differential. I supported the rear subframe and removed the metal plate to get a better position on the opening. So now, you can see here, we're gonna get access into these grooves. We're gonna bang that loose and hopefully separate the drive shaft from the differential. Let's get in there and get weird. There we go. Gonna give this drive shaft a little rotate. Yeah, there we go. Come on, my bigger bar in here now. Let's give it one more spin. There it is, boys. Let's go. Woo! How did this go? Like this? With the drive shaft finally out, we can work on getting the transmission removed. To begin, we need to disconnect the negative terminal from the battery and remove the shift knob from inside. Careful not to punch yourself in the face as you pull up. Underneath the vehicle, a few zip ties and captive screws to remove the under tray. Lastly, we have to remove the reinforcement plate. My plate is a little banged up and was bent, covering up one of the bolts needed to get it off. Some hammering to reshape the plate and we're good to go. Damn, that's a dirty ass piece. Ziploc baggie method, always a good idea. Reinforcement plate bolts, I got all 8 of them in there. Alrighty boys, now we can actually get started on removing this transmission. First thing we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna pop this transmission sensor out. This is for, I think, reverse gear or something. Yeah, and then it goes up and over. Next up, we have 2 13s for the clutch slave cylinder. There's one. Let's see how I can get this one out. There we go. So just get that up and out of the way. You can see now the 2 studs that are right there. Just gonna let this hang on my control arm out here. Next up, we're gonna remove the transmission linkage. So you just got these little clips here. Just wanna spin it to give you access so you can kind of just punch a clip out like that. Yeah, just like that. Walk it one way. Just drop it down like that. Now we can drop this brace. And there's also 2 13 mils in here connecting the transmission brace bushings to this brace right here. There we go. So I'm gonna let it droop a bit. Shit, that sounds crazy. I do have some pretty worn out transmission or motor mounts, so it's probably helping me sag the transmission a bit as well. Yeah, that's just the sound of the exhaust manifolds laying on this heat shield here, but this should give me the droop that I need to get the torque bolts at the very top of the transmission. So first I'm gonna work on these 2 side ones, but I do wanna hit the top ones first before I even start the bottom ones, just because those are the hardest to get to. So let's get on that now. My ZF 5-speed had a total of 9 Torx bolts connecting the transmission to the engine. 4 around the bottom, 1 on the left side near the clutch cylinder, and 4 more hidden up top. 2 for the starter and the other 2 connecting the top half of the transmission to the engine. For this part, we will need a combination of long wobble head and straight head extensions, plus some swivel head sockets to get access to those 4 at the top of the bell housing. Let's finally get this transmission out of Yoshimitsu. You guys are pretty much just gonna get a view from the back of my head, but this is what it is, boys. Trying my best here. Wow, that was weirdly loose on there. That's weird. All right, I'll get my hand in there after. Let's get to the next one. It's the hardest one right here, technically, just because it's at the very top. Got you, motherfucker. Wow. These are seriously so loose, it's crazy. I don't know what these are supposed to be torqued to. These seem extremely loose. I guess I'm not complaining, or I shouldn't be complaining. All right, I'm gonna work on those 2 14s now. All right, this is a 14 mil, so I'm assuming the torque's definitely gotta be higher than this. Oh my gosh, okay, it's getting me nervous here. There we go, good sound. Got that one, boys. I was absolutely terrified of rounding that nut or snapping the head. So be very careful. Make sure your extension is completely seated on that bolt before you try to put some torque on it. So that's 3 out of the 4 top hard ones. We got one last one. It's gonna be on the right side here. We're gonna work on that now. All right, boys. Because of the angle of the bolt off to the right, I'm using a 14 on a universal, or I don't know what this is called, 360 swivel, whatever you want to call it. See if maybe we can get this seated. Because I tried to loosen it just now. I noticed it wasn't fully seated, and that's going to be the end of you. So don't do that. Oh, guys, absolutely. This is the hardest one. Hands down. Lay on your back, find the right extension setup, and it can be done. Next up, we're removing the last 3 of the E10 bolts. These are cake compared to the E14s. Yeah. Lovely. Ta-da. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Holy shit, guys. Oh, damn. They're on there good, boys. Bolt's just about out. And there is no tension on it, which tells me that it still needs to be separated from the chassis. When I do this, I'm literally shaking the engine, not even just the transmission. The engine is also moving with it, which is kind of wild. Aha, so I have found the culprit, boys. We're now looking towards the back of the engine. I'm in front of it here. Here's your headers. And then here's the transmission. You can clearly see it's separated, but check this out. Let's see if you guys can see this. There's a little plate. You can see it kind of bending towards the transmission, and there's an 8 mil on it. Let's see if you can see that fucker. You see him? It's the bolt's facing this way. That's why I didn't catch it. I was thinking the bolt was gonna be on, you know, the other side, but we're gonna take that off, and I'll be able to drop this transmission. Let's go. Got this
catastrophe.
Check this out, boys. We are making progress. Next up, we have the pressure plate, the clutch and flywheel, all together in this one piece. Let's start off by getting this pressure plate removed. All right, so starting off with 6 mil Allen bolts all around. Let's just crack these loose. This is pretty freaking heavy, I think, so. Oh, there's the clutch with it. Check it out, boys. There it is. Clutch and pressure plate. Really not sure how that looks. I haven't really seen any other clutches and pressure plates, but here's our flywheel, which seems to be looking pretty good too. 115,000 miles, so I think it's the original flywheel, so. Lastly, we have the flywheel to remove. I don't have a flywheel locking tool, so I got creative with a bolt and a 14mm wrench. We're on, off. Oh, come on. How are you looking on this bolt? You know what? It actually looks, I don't know, pretty straight. I'm gonna compare it to others, but it actually looks fine. It is a big ass bolt, so.
And just like that, boys, we finally have the transmission and drivetrain disassembled from Project Yoshimitsu. From here, we can begin installing all the upgraded components we went over in the intro. Remember, this is an important step to this build project as we'll be pushing almost double the horsepower through this engine and need to make sure the transmission and drive line are upgraded to handle the new power. With the transmission finally out, we can undress some of the components and give it a good clean. Now that the transmission is looking clean, we can finally get into installing some upgrades. But we've ran into a problem.
So one of the main reasons for taking off this transmission, aside from doing the clutch and flywheel job, is to attack the detent pins in the transmission. So this ZF 5-speed transmission that's in the BMW 330 Ci and certain E46 models have detent pins that allow you to enter and exit certain gears. Well, those detent pins over time get worn out. They're actually located in here. And there's another two somewhere on the top. You'll start misbehaving and you'll see what's called the 5th gear lean in the morning on cold startups when the transmission is still cold. You'll see where your stick should be centered in the H pattern shifting. It'll be sitting off to the right. In order to do the job, they make a BMW Drift Set tool, which you need to do this job, and that tool set is going to perfectly place the pins at the proper location and stop on the body of the transmission once you've pushed it in far enough. So you need that drift set. You don't want to push these pins too deep into the transmission, and they can't be too far out either. Well, a fellow E46 fanatic like me, I reached out and I said, hey, does anybody have this drift set? It's about $130 to get, and I'm only going to use it literally one time for this. So I figured if somebody already had made the purchase before me, let me reach out to E46 fanatics, guys, see if anybody's there to help. Sure enough, shout out to Adam. He reached out to me. He said he had a drift set and if I was going to use it and just be kindly enough to send it back. Well, he sends it to me, and lo and behold, I open the box. There's nothing in the box. I noticed the box was a little damaged, looked like it might have been tampered with. Well, turns out FedEx pretty much lost the package. I could see that he sent the package to me at a FedEx station, and it was weighed and stickered at a FedEx station because you could see the weight and the sticker on the box. So there was something in the box. It weighed 3¼ pounds, and when I got the box, it was completely empty. So I don't know if he either fell out under the truck or what, but I filed a claim. Essentially, I can't do the detent pins until I get that tool set. So fingers crossed they show up. I have a claim open right now with FedEx, and I'm trying to see if I can get over to the driver. Dropped it off to me yesterday, and see if maybe they fell out into his truck. But if not, I can't get the transmission back in the car until this part is done. So kind of a roadblock there. Kind of a bummer as well. I might have to buy a drift set now, $130 just for this little job. So not a little job, but I'm not gonna let that slow us down. We'll skip over that, and we're gonna get installing the clutch, all the auxiliary items to the transmission, everything I can do outside of the detent pin job, we're gonna get done now. Let's start on adding all the auxiliary items to the transmission. so I just struggled with that for an embarrassingly long amount of time. It's finally on there. Next up, we have some new performance trans mounts. Just making note of the orientation, the dimple there. Just gonna hand thread it. Beautiful. Next up, we have the throwout bearing. Just take it out like that. Up here, separate it like this. Super dirty clutch fork. I'm gonna be replacing it with a metal one. Let's punch it out real quick. Okay, here we got our new one. Trick to pushing this in is like a little 14 mil, just like that. Might be in your way for a second, but gotta do it, boy. That's it. All right, just the skosh of brake grease just on the tip there. Throw out bearings gonna sit like this, just like that. So when you push the clutch through this hole here, it's then gonna push on this like this. Repair manual also calls for some brake grease, the splines and the shaft. So we're gonna do that. All right, next up we got the new Guibo. Just make sure this arrow is pointing to a flange. Alrighty boys, now we're onto the drive shaft here. We need to get these two pieces separated and install a new center support bearing. I got some butyl tape and another one of those collars, a new collar, and then some new hardware there. There's a really big like 18 mil nut in here you need to break loose. I already have these matched marks, so when I go to put them together, I know to put these sides together. But let's get to it. I have a ratcheting 18, which is kind of nice, should help speed up the process, but first we gotta break this big nut loose. Seen some videos where they stick bar in here and hold one side down while I push the other. So let's give that a shot. Let's break these puppies loose. There we go, baby. All right, now from here, we're just gonna work on hitting this center support bearing off. Trying not to hit the drive shaft, but this is plastic. I don't think I'm gonna damage the drive shaft by doing that. Oh, there's a little ring that just popped off here. Yeah, figured that was gonna happen. You're just gonna get a really big flathead and just try to punch into this rubber. And just like that, we're off, baby. So let me show you guys the drive shaft here. This is where you're gonna be sliding the new center support bearing back onto. So you're gonna have to hit the center support bearing and slide it down this lip. You only gotta go about an inch or so till it bottoms out. And we're trying to hit the bearing on this lip here, or even the outer one. But this one will do. Obviously you're gonna have your splines sticking through this way, so you're gonna be trying to slide it down. Well, one good way is just to get a big socket or make a socket, cut the end off of it. That's the diameter of this. But I did read somewhere online that you can take this piece, which is the diameter of the drive shaft. I don't know why my car doesn't. Maybe in the kit they sent me a bunch of pieces that come with this piece. If your drive shaft does have it, there is different drive shaft styles, but this piece just so happens to fit perfectly there and match the dimensions of that inner ring. So I could use this, hammer this in to drive the center support bearing down. So that's what we're gonna do. The only issue is this is just a few threads too short that the drive shaft splines are gonna stick through it, so I won't be able to pound it all the way down and I'll hit the top of the drive shaft. So I got this puppy, which I'm gonna try to tape to it just to give me that extra extension that I need. This will give me the length and I'll hit on the back of this and drive that in. So let's try this. What the hell do y'all think? Fingers crossed this works, boys. Told you I wasn't a mechanic. Just a young bull trying to get it done, semi-decent. Let's go. Did I do it? Yo, I did it. Holy shit, boys. How I look? Did it, boys. What I thought was gonna be definitely a trickier part of this whole thing, has ended up being pretty smooth. So thank the Lord. Let's get this puppy put back together and let's get on to what's next.
Now we're really starting to pick up some momentum. With the drive shaft reassembled and the transmission tidied up as much as possible, we make our way back underneath the car to remove the last two pieces from the engine, the rear main seal and the pilot bearing. The pilot bearing requires a special BMW tool that I do not have, so we're doing it the old school way.
That's right, boys. We're going the old school method. We're going to be punching this bread into that hole there in the pilot bearing and just using good old hydraulic pressure to get this this bearing out. So let's get on it. There we go. Now that bread that's getting pushed out the back is gonna be stuck, and that's what's gonna keep my keep creating more pressure in there. Might need a whole nother hot dog bun. Can you imagine? Let's go. Method worked. 10 mil socket and a bunch of freaking bread. It's coming out in one piece. Hey, look at that. Just kidding. We got our new pilot bearing here. Just like that. Just kind of tap it in and then take a 24 mil socket. Just get it right on the edges there. Just like that, boys. It'll bottom out. You'll hear it, the tone change. Lastly, we have the rear main seal. We got 4 10s at the top. We also have 2 10s down here, which need to break loose from the oil pan. And lastly, just 2 13s on either side here. That. You'll see here a little gasket. You just want to lift this puppy up. Try to get underneath it. All right, got a little utility knife here. And it's off. Now we're just going to clean the surface with some brake clean. Service manual calls for a little bit of RTV on this joining edge here between the oil pan and the head itself. Just gonna try to lay a bead best I can. Not too crazy. I don't even know if that's too much. I'm absolutely terrified of doing this stuff wrong just because I did this once in my water pump, which you're really not even supposed to use any of this for the water pump. It's not written anywhere to use it for the water pump. And I was leaking shortly after from the water pump. So let's just say that. Just want to not overdo it here. I think we're looking, I think we're good. All right. Repair manual wants you to use some oil on the bearing itself. Got a little bit here. I'm just gonna. Now we got the main seal going on. Put this tool on here. Yep, looks like I'm on right. Next, we're gonna run these 10s down loosely. Then we're gonna run the 2 long ones by hand up under here. Just make sure that they can thread in. And that's just letting you know you're lined up correctly. And lastly, we got 13 mil bolts, which I already have Loctite on them. They come pre-Loctite. I'm just gonna add some thread sealant onto them as well. That's it, baby. Rear main seal's done. Damn. Well, that's it for today, boys. We got a lot of stuff done. We're so close, guys. We're so close I can taste it. almost a full drivetrain and transmission rebuild almost done. All we have left is the Detent Pins and the clutch and flywheel. I already ordered the Detent Pins, screw FedEx, I'm not gonna wait for them. If they end up finding them, I'll sell them, give them back to the guy who gave it to me. I don't know, we'll figure something out between each other, but Detent Pins is what's next, and a clutch and flywheel. Hopefully they get here tomorrow, and if they do, boys, we're almost there. Complete transmission and drivetrain refresh in this car, gonna be done. So I'll see you guys tomorrow when those Detent Pins come in, and we'll keep going, boys. Let's go. Got the whole gang with us. We got National Geographic going on here while I'm working. I don't know if they about to mate or what. Well. Look what we have here, boys. Finally came in. We got our Detent Pins so we can finally get this transmission fully buttoned up. I also got a little tap and die kit just so we could chase the threads on the flywheel and the transmission bell housing and stuff so that those threads go in. Super easy, but really we've been waiting on this baby. So let's open this up real quick. Let's get this bad boy open. So this is what you're gonna need. This is the special tools that BMW requires you to use in order to do these Detent Pins. So 125 bucks, boys. Just so we can do these Detent Pins. Jeez. But these are you're gonna actually use a hammer with these and tap the pins in, and then they bottom out onto the frame of the transmission at the perfect height for each of the pins to sit exactly where they need to sit in the transmission. So they have their own numbers here and they're all machined and stuff, but shout out to Race German. Check them out. They actually have a badass website with a lot of cool, unique parts specifically for E46, 36, all kinds of BMW chassis, but cool, unique stuff that you're only gonna find once you get into the nooks and crannies of these cars and the scene. It's a pretty cool website. I have them saved on my bookmarks. But anyways, let's get to getting these Detent Pins put in this transmission, boys, and get this transmission back in the car.
Doing the Detent Pins is something I'd only recommend someone to do if they're already taken out their transmission from some other reason, like a new clutch and flywheel. The issue I keep mentioning with the shifter not centering when the transmission is cold was a manageable issue for me, as once the car was warmed up, it would go away. I had heard doing this job would not only fix that issue, but rejuvenate the feel of the transmission internals, and since I had all the new components to the shifter assembly, I figured, do it once, do it right. But man, this was not a fun job. I always say, if the DIY is a 30-minute YouTube video, multiply the minutes by 10, and that's how long it's going to take you. Removing the pins for first through fourth requires you to remove the metal caps covering the bores. With a steel cap and an aluminum body, they do not come out easy. Once out, you must reinsert the new sleeves at a specific depth. Too deep and you run the risk of pushing them into the transmission. Just be ready to buy another one at that point. Too shallow and they don't operate the gears properly. But that's what the BMW Drift Kit is for. After first through fourth are completed, we're off to fifth and reverse to do the same and wrap up this job.
Flip the transmission on its side and we're off to the last two and the hardest two. Wish me luck, boys. I'm gonna go reverse and fifth gear right here. This is it.
To do this right, you'll need two thin flathead screwdrivers with a large handle so it can take the impact of a hammer. The thin flatheads will allow you to really get in between the sleeves and the bore itself. If your flathead is too large, you won't have the fidelity you need and you'll just end up damaging the bore. Now you will mar the sides of the cylinder bore. There's just no way around it. But too large of a flathead and it could be really bad. Just be careful not to punch the sleeve into the transmission as you work it off the cylinder wall. With a ton of patience and perseverance, your sleeve should be bent and separated enough from the bore to fit some pliers inside to remove.
Telling you right now, boys, this shit is what nightmares are made out of. Look at this, look how much I scored the bore. Not something you want to do, but look at that. Obliterated it. I went down there and tried to pick up as much with a magnetic screwdriver, but you are gonna put a sleeve in here anyways, but that's horrible. Like, that is so chewed out. I'm gonna go over it now with 800 and 1000, but let's see. I'm your guys' test dummy. If this still works after all that damage, then you will know for future reference what you can and can't do with Detent Pins. But I'm so glad this is almost over. Holy crap.
Using 800 and 1200 grit sandpaper, I made myself a makeshift sanding tool and sanded the bore down, and it surprisingly helped smooth things out. Then used the BMW drift tool to seat the sleeves and new detent pins in place. With some help from my brother-in-law, he was able to push the spring cap closed using a 3/8 extension and the snap ring pliers in his other hand to set the C-clip. Sometimes a fresh set of eyes can really make all the difference when you are stuck on something.
Well, that's it, boys. We're finally done with the transmission. Holy crap. I hope to never have to go through that again. The detent pins and stuff are terrible, but I figured they have to be done. It's one time I'm gonna have this transmission out and do all of this stuff. I might as well do it all and do it right. So the detents work, centers me back into neutral. When I'm ready to install it into the car, I will remove this shaft, just leaving this portion exposed, and see if we can thread this back in on the top once we're up into the car. But we are officially done.
Success.
Done with the transmission.
Shit, I can't even believe it.
Now with the transmission finally done, I'll meet you guys back under the car to finish up the clutch and flywheel. Back under the car, we're ready to get the flywheel, pressure plate, and clutch all on. So let's get to it. We're starting off with the beautiful single mass flywheel, noting where the dowel is. On the back of this flywheel somewhere, you'll see one hole is bigger than the other. See, this one here has a little lip for the dowel. Felt great, just like that. Feed some Loctite on here. Ready to start with. All right, now that we're ready to torque the bolts down, we're gonna do my little handy dandy flywheel holding tool idea thing. There we go.
Next up, we need to get the clutch and pressure plate mated to the flywheel. And to do so, we need to make a clutch alignment tool. After returning 2 different tools I ordered online due to poor fitment, I decided to create my own. The 3 important dimensions we are looking for are as follows: the diameter of the pilot bearing inner bore, the diameter of the clutch disc splines, and the distance between the two. We're going to use the same 10mm deep socket that we used for the pilot bearing bread Bonanza, as the socket was a perfect fit into the pilot bearing. After that, we're attaching a 3/8 extension into the back of the socket and then pushing the socket into the pilot bearing along with the clutch disc to find the location at which the clutch disc sits flush with the flywheel. With the location marked, we can wrap the extension in tape until we can match the diameter of the clutch disc splines. With our tool made, we are ready to install the clutch and pressure plate. We'll begin by installing the clutch onto our tool and pushing the tool into the pilot bearing bore. After that, we can carefully seat the pressure plate over the clutch, making sure not to knock the alignment tool out of socket. Once seated, slowly work the pressure plate bolts down using an electric socket while making sure the alignment tool stays flush with the pilot bearing. Once the bolts are snugged, we can torque the plate to spec.
Now for the final part. Absolutely beautiful.
And just like that, boys, the clutch, flywheel, and pressure plate are all torqued and mated to the engine. I actually put the clutch on backwards, so I went back underneath, opened the pressure plate, flipped the clutch, and repeated the alignment process. We're so close. Just a few more steps and we will have completed our full drivetrain upgrade on Project Yoshimitsu. Now for the hard part of getting the transmission back up into the car. Starting off with loosening the top nuts of both my engine mounts. We need to tilt the engine by pushing up from the front oil pan to help give us a better angle at lining the transmission up. With the mounts loose, this will allow us to do exactly that. The driver's side mount requires removal of the air intake to gain access to the top nut. Since we are turboing the car, the air intake is no longer needed anyways, so this will help save us some time in episode 3. Along with the mounts, removal of the cabin filter housing will give us the space needed up top to allow the engine to tilt. Lastly, removal of the front sway bar will expose the location at which we will lift the engine from. Once the engine is prepped, we can take our jack and lightly jack the front of the engine up. With the engine angle to help us out, we can go in for the kill. I won't make you watch the 2 hours it took me to get this transmission on, don't worry. I can't really say much about this part other than it's not fun to do at all. If you have someone to help you, get them. Also, these quick jacks are nice, but not being able to move in and out from underneath the car through the sides really made this that much more frustrating to do, as I was working with a very small space. Also, without jacking the front of the engine up, installing the transmission wouldn't be possible, as you'd run into the top of the trans tunnel trying to line up the input shaft. The work you do with the clutch alignment tool will be most important, as you'll need to push the trans input shaft through the clutch and into the pilot bearing. If the alignment of the clutch and pilot bearing are off by more than a few millimeters, your input shaft from your transmission will not go in, and you'll be stuck half-inch away from your block, frustrated because you're so close but so far. So, make sure to check your clutch and pilot bearing alignment after pulling out your handmade tool. If they look slightly off-center, loosen your pressure plate until the clutch inside can be moved ever so slightly and line it up. Retorque your plate and then go for installing the transmission. God! Transmission's finally in the car, boys. Whew, I am fried. But it is possible with just one person. God, I'm so happy this part's done. Shit. This might have been, look at that, nothing underneath it. Transmission's all the way in. And I want to show you guys the shifter now. We got that installed as well. Let's take a look at it. Woo. Oh my gosh, it feels so tight. The height is not too bad either. Here, I'll take it off just so we can see it visually. I'm gonna put this back on though. We're not taking this off officially until we're all done here, but man, still getting some fifth gear lean, but I heard in the beginning that's kind of, that goes away over time, especially when you first do the detents. Feels incredible though, boys. Holy crap. I think it looks so good too. I can still get a few mil more higher too to get an even shorter throw, which I might actually do. I could take it off later when I get closer to actually finishing this. What do you guys think? Yahoo! Sick. Well, that's it, boys. Finally done with chapter 1. Jeez. Transmission and driveline is all tightened up, and this transmission is ready for double the horsepower that we're going to be pushing through it. So super stoked about that. This was one of the hardest jobs. It's probably the hardest job I've ever done, but from here, things will start to get easier and more exciting. So with that being said, we are ready for episode 3, guys. Everything to do with the oil pan, the manifold can finally get mounted. It's gonna be super exciting. So if you guys like the video, please give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in episode 3.